Hello, beloved. My work has as a key element to it sitting across from people, usually individuals, but sometimes whole groups, sometimes classrooms, sometimes conference rooms, sometimes congregations. But being across from them and holding space, and that term holding space is something that is part of the helping profession, particularly in line when it comes to spiritual space, emotional space, even therapeutic spaces. People who practice in these professions are trained in and adept in and regularly enter willingly into being present to the hurt, to the pain, to the grief, to the ugliness of life being experienced and lived out in others. We sit with that often alongside the dismissal that anything that we are doing is even important or needed or necessary, and why would it take anything out of us? And yet it does. And when we are living in a time where people with power are seeking to enact harm, and people with immense wealth are hoarding it or trying to procure or steal more, when we live in a time where empathy is being called something wrong, that the actual embodiment of care for another is wrong, then being among the communities of people who hold space really begins to take a toll. And what is crucial, and what we find again and again in the research, is that those of us who are in professions that hold space do not take care of ourselves. And that's regular, that's common. So, whether it's the lone wolf syndrome, or the becoming more and more disconnected, or the going into deep progressive burnout, or even finding ourselves in survival mode, or working in organizations that do not understand that we have to have time away, we have to have time off, we have to have breaks, because what we do exacts a price from us too. And we must be invited into spaces where we can replenish and we can renew and we can reconnect in order to be able to be present again. To be present to your pain, to be present in your grief, to be present in the unthinkable, horrible, horrifying experiences of life, to be present in the face of injustice, to be present in the moment of utter severing of relationships, to be present in the dehumanizing language of someone who needs us in the moment and is seeing us as other and it simultaneously. We have to have space too. Personally, one of the primary ways that I claim space in the work that I do currently, the way that I claim space is that I gather myself into community where someone else offers me the gift of holding that space. And so on most Sunday mornings, you will find me in my local congregation, not leading it, not as my work is framed right now, but instead allowing a very gifted and loving, deeply theologically resonant and relevant, beautiful soul of a pastor to hold that space for me in amongst the congregation so that I am able to recharge, to reconnect whatever was disconnected during the week, so that I am able to express the griefs and the hurts and the pains as I have experienced them, not telling what they were, but how I have carried them. Except yesterday I didn't do that. Yesterday, shortly after it opened, I went to a local coffee shop, a local cafe that recently opened a few months ago and has already begun to capture the imagination and the community need for connection that has implicit and explicit in its presence, in its atmosphere, in its actual wording of its invitation, that it is a place of connection. It is a place where those who are lonely can come and find themselves. It's a place for those who are unseen to find themselves. It is a place where all are welcome as they are. And it does that very organically and beautifully. My congregation does that too. But yesterday I needed to be at this cafe. And so shortly after it opened, my beloved and I went. Books, computers, all of our various paraphernalia in hand, with the intent of staying throughout the entire time it was opened. And we started the day and it was quiet. There was one other person there working. And we lingered and more people came in, and some came in and grabbed tea or coffee or kombucha or whatever it was that they were looking for, and then they left. And some came in and they stayed, and some were working and some were meeting others, and some were having conversations, and there was a table with a little baby playing and delighting and drawing all of our attention at one point or another. But I needed to be there yesterday. I needed to be in that community yesterday. Because on Saturday night, I was there in that same space, helping to celebrate and delight in the wonderfully adroit and campy experience that is a drag queen show. Celebrating the 1 year anniversary of a group of queens who were also celebrating that it's National Literacy Week or day. I'm not sure which. But they were celebrating that. And people had been invited to bring books. And the entire event, all of the raffles, all of the things that were being offered, everything there was to raise money to buy books so that whenever they're doing a storytelling hour, every single child who comes has an age-appropriate book to take home with them. Promoting literacy, I sat amongst a group of women who were all part of a book club, who had decided that this was something they needed to do because the current book they were reading had a transgender character in it, and they needed to know more, and so they decided to come and to celebrate and to experience this, for many of them, for the first time. I sat among other attendees who are members of the LGBTQIA plus community, people who are allies, people who just enjoy a really good show or are very competitive and love to enter raffles so that they can see if they might win. Really doesn't matter what the prize is. Just want to win. And I sat there delighting in the fun of it, the goofiness of it, the the joy of it, and the exuberance. Being able to laugh, being able to cheer on a queen on her debut on the stage, and another who is an award winner. It was not my first drag show. That was over 30 years ago in an underground bar in Jackson, Mississippi, where I discovered the glory of being short when you stand among the queens. But Saturday night, in the midst of the show, 3 firemen walked in. And I was sitting toward the back, and so I noticed them along with the other folks in the back. And I thought someone must have gotten sick. There must be an emergency, and they're very quietly coming in and taking care of it. But no. They were there to evacuate the building, the entire building, the restaurant that's part of that building, all of the cafe, everyone there at the show, to evacuate because someone who was so small-minded and so hate-filled and had nothing to actually do with what was going on, someone decided that it would be fun, I guess, to send an email to someone in, well, I'm not going to say. They sent an email, and that person got it and alerted the police. And we all immediately evacuated. Most people scattered to the wind. A small handful of us and the restaurant staff stood across the street from the restaurant in 32-degree weather with the wind blowing. And I listened particularly to the members of the LGBTQIA+ community who were still there, to the queens, to the owner of the cafe, to the mistress of ceremonies. I listened and I heard moments of fear and frustration and anger and deep hurt. And I heard someone suggest this must have come from a church, and someone else very quickly said, no, not here. So many of the churches here are actually supportive. You can't assume that this was a religious nut. And as a Christian and a minister, I so appreciated that clarity, but I also understood why it would have been assumed. Because I have heard the hatred and the harm come out of people who profess to be Christian, and they don't seem to even understand that what they are doing is talking about other children of God who do not happen to be just like them, but actually are, no more no less. And so then there was a turn, and there was a calling for, no, we claim the joy. We claim the joy. We do not let this turn us away. We are not going away. We do not back down. We claim the joy here. And we sang, I Will Survive. And I want to dance with somebody on the street corner in 32-degree freezing weather. And waited until it became clear it would be a number of hours before they could clear the building and make sure that everyone was safe. didn't feel fear. I didn't feel joy either. I felt rage. And so I needed to be back in that space yesterday. I needed to go back into that space, not as a protest, not as some sort of, here I am, your ally, I'm doing this. No. I needed to go back into that space and order my pot of tea. And sit for those hours. And be held. We are such a vicious species. We turn on each other. We attack without any reason those who are weaker and smaller than us. And we claim the moments of community and joy as opportunities to inflict harm and chaos and disarray and fear, to try to take away any moment that is life giving. How ugly and small we can be. I do not know who did this. I do not know. It doesn't really matter. And I'm not interested in saying all kinds of vile, belittling things that I'm thinking about this person, because that is really of no consequence either. I have been an ally to the LGBTQIA community since high school. I have known people who were part of that community before I ever was able to know what any of it meant, because they were just people. And you have too. And if your first response to someone who is different from you, if your first response or your second or your third is dismissal, dehumanization, hate, I don't want anything to do with them. I don't have anything. You need to push it back from them. They shouldn't be here. Things are going down if they're present. We can't have that. This is somehow a threat to me. Get a grip and breathe out before you do something or say something that one day you may regret. I have known too many people, too many beloved souls within this community who, in quiet conversations throughout the years, have told me about their suicidal thoughts, about their being dismissed and removed from their families, about their being derided, ostracized, pushed aside. I have sat with too many people who have expressed their pain because those who said they loved them now say they can't abide them simply because of who they are. That's so 20th century. War is so 20th century. Chaos making, all of those things, that belongs to prior generations. Get over it. There is a better way to be. Yesterday, I went with my beloved and sat quietly in a space that would welcome us without any hesitation. Just to be there and to reclaim it. And I'll be going back again and again and again. And if you happen to live near me, and those of you who are seeing this who do know that you do, then I invite you back too. And you know what? However you show up, you're going to be welcome too. And I suggest the lavender lemonade tea because it's really, really good. But if you don't live near me, if you've never been to a pride parade, if you've never gone to a drag story hour, if you think that you don't know someone who is part of this particular community, I invite you to take a very, very small step. Just one. Ask somebody you think might know something about it. Just ask them about it. You don't have to caveat it with, I don't believe but, or I don't, just say, here's your practice. I wonder. I don't know much about this. I'm curious. I would just like to know a little more. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know how to think about it. But I know that there's lots of people out there, and I'm trying to learn something new. Hate does not have to be a habit. Dismissing people because they are somehow different from you, or because you fear that they may be more like you than you realize or want, does not have to be a manner of being. We can actually change. That is one of the blessings of being humans, is we have the capacity to begin to craft new habits, new patterns, new ways of being that are life-giving. And I can assure you that the ones that are dismissing of others, the ones that are pushing away others for whatever reason, because I've never thought about it, because I don't know anybody. Yes, you do. They just haven't honored you by letting you know who they truly are. Because my faith has taught me something about it, because I've never known how to be different than I am, none of those are full reasons to say that I can't learn how to be connecting and part of community, respectful and compassionate and empathetic and kind and curious. I had a very dear professor as an undergrad at my Christian college who used to make the statement, Jesus knew where all the best parties are. Because he was constantly being accused of being drunk and hanging out with all of the wrong people. And he was. He hung out with the wealthy folks at their banquets. He hung out with the folks who were working and helping the poor. He hung out with people who were connected to the government. Oh, and by the way, he also hung out with folks who had an array of experiences in their lives that gave other people reason to think that it was okay to dismiss them and dehumanize them and push them away. He hung out with all of them. So to my Christian friends, or perhaps to Christians who know me, if you do not claim me as friend, I invite you to consider how broad your welcome is, how authentic is your presence in your communities. Who does not know that they could trust you with who they truly are? Who has to be protective around you so that you can feel comfortable and complacent? Who doesn't know whether or not you would show up for them? We have work to do. And it can start with curiosity, a bit of wonder, some education, and some care. I'll be back for the next show. Hope to see you there. Blessings on the journey. You are not alone.